Hi, my name is Macee Rehm. For the introduction, it is how natural resources have a major impact on the environment. Sustainability was introduced. Marron defines sustainability as making sure that natural resources that are being used are going to be around. In the healthcare environment, it is important to look for ways to become more greener. According to Marthium, most of the sustainabilities in the healthcare world deals with waste management and pollution. Our paper is going to talk about the use of horseshoe crab blood for vaccines and how it is not green. So for phase 1, for the unfreeze phase, it is the blue blood from the horseshoe crab is being used medically to make injections, vaccines, and medical devices. It also can be used for the detection of endotoxins. Approximately 5,000 horseshoe crabs are having around 33% of their blood drained every year. This hurts or even kills the crabs. Approximately 130,000 horseshoe crabs die each year. Unfreeze continued. The harvesting of their blood needs to end so the horseshoe crab does not become extinct. In 2016, the horseshoe crab moved to the vulnerable list for extinction, according to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. With the horseshoe crab population decreasing, it leads to other wildlife being affected.
Endotoxin testing is an incredibly important part of manufacturing vaccines and injectable medicines. In a drug study in 2006, there were 6 healthy individuals injected with this new experimental drug. Um, all 6 of the individuals were healthy. Like the day before, they were incredibly healthy. And after being injected with the drug, they all experienced multi-organ failure, with some of them needing to stay in the hospital for an extended period of time. It was found that this drug had a high level of cytokine, which basically just means it was really high in endotoxins and different toxins from cells. Um, so while it is incredibly important that we change how endotoxin testing is done, it is a change that needs to happen slowly with a lot of research and a lot of data to back up the new forms of testing. The first thing that really needs to be changed is the FDA's good manufacturing processes. Um, these practices need to be followed by all of the biotech companies that are producing materials that will be going into humans. Um, Everyone needs to follow those. There's audits every year, and it's just a change that needs to happen there first before it can trickle down to the rest of the industry. In May of 2020, the U.S. Pharmacopoeia released a statement saying that they will approve drugs that have been endotoxin tested using the recombinant factor C testing. Um, that testing is a new form of test that can replace the old form of testing, which is using the LAL. So the most common form of endotoxin testing that's used right now is using the LAL, which is that reagent that is present in the blood of the horseshoe crab. Um, with how much is used right now and the huge exponential growth that has been happening in the biotech industry, it's not a sustainable change. The the change that really needs to happen is like industry leaders, those really big biotech companies that a lot of other companies are looking up to, are the first ones that need to make the change to the new form of testing. If they are able to do it and they have the studies and the data to back up that change, it's more likely that smaller companies will follow in their footsteps and start using the same form of testing, which will save maybe an entire species from extinction. I think that the first step of rephrasing this change relies in the vendors. Having reliable vendors is incredibly important for a larger biotech company. If they're not able to get the correct supplies for a test that they need to do every day multiple times, they're not going to spend the money to make that change and to get the equipment that's needed for that testing, if they're going to end up having to go back to the other form sometimes. So having a vendor that is reliable, that will have stock, is incredibly important, but also having a backup vendor is important too. COVID has really shown that there can be shortages in companies if manufacturing isn't happening fast enough. And if there is a shortage, you need to have a backup plan. Otherwise, there's going to be a halt on production, which can cost a lot of money for the companies. So having a backup vendor and also a reliable first vendor would be incredibly important for people making the change and to keep the change. Another thing that would be really important regarding the vendors and refreezing this change is having high quality materials being produced by those vendors. It's really important in science for the tests to be accurate and to have the same result every time. If there's something that is produced incorrectly, that could result in an incorrect positive, or not an incorrect positive, an incorrect negative test, which could end up making that material move on in the process, and that could end up in fatalities if there's people that are using that drug. Like in the case of that study from 2006 that I talked about in the last slide, that inaccurate test could have resulted in those people dying. Luckily, it didn't in that situation, but that's not always going to happen. So having high quality testing in those vendors is incredibly important. Also, making sure that you're getting high quality materials that are going to result in the same results every time is important. I think that another really good way to refreeze is having incentives to using synthetic tests instead of the natural occurring LAL. Would be really important for those bigger biotech companies also. Maybe having a tax break for using the synthetic version. That will encourage a lot of bigger companies to move to that. The last thing that I think would be really important is education to those that are in the industry. I think that a lot of people might not fully understand the extent to what is happening with LAL. I think a lot of people don't know that there has been such a decrease in population numbers for the horseshoe crab directly resulting from the use of LAL. So I think that educating those that are in the industry will lead to keeping that change, basically. If the people know how bad LAL is to the population of horseshoe crabs, they will not want to go back once the synthetic testing has been started.
The use of natural resources affects our environment. Sustainability needs to be observed. It is important for healthcare to look into becoming more green. Properties of the blood from horseshoe crabs used in endotoxin detection on the vulnerable list for extinction. Important for accurate endotoxin and FDA processes. Need to be changed. Need to provide options for companies to implement the use of synthetic materials. And then these are our references.